Hello, Scooby Doo fans! Welcome to my Season 1 Episode 2 review of Scooby Doo Where Are You? So last time I reviewed Season 1 Episode 6 of the new Scooby Doo movies, and now I'm kicking off my 2024 Summer Special with a re-review of Season 1 Episode 2 of Scooby Doo Where Are You? I hope you guys enjoyed the Phyllis Diller episode review. And yeah, we'll be focusing on Scooby for the entire Summer Special, for the entire 2024 Summer Special, and we'll start off with a re-review of Season 1 Episode 2. And of course, today I will be covering Season 1 Episode 2, Scooby Doo Where Are You, titled A Clue for Scooby Doo, which was released on September 20th, 1969. I should also mention before we continue forward that this episode and Hassle in the Castle are often mixed up on which one is Episode 2 and 3. There are conflicting sources that try to say Hassle in the Castle is the second episode. Most reliable sources and most DVDs list A Clue for Scooby-Doo as Episode 2 Scooby-Doo Where Are You? And I believe it to be true because most of the reliable sources say it. And also because A Clue for Scooby-Doo has the same title card as Episode 1. It does the stylized title card with a monster as the forefront, whereas Episode 3 onwards has the gang running in place with the title over them. So it doesn't make sense that they would switch title cards for 3 episodes. It makes more sense that the first 2 episodes they tried those stylized title cards with the villains, and then they dropped that gimmick when Episode 3 came along. So what I actually found is that most likely Hassle in the Castle was produced second, but not released second. And that's a big difference. Regardless, whether you want to consider A Clue for Scooby-Doo Episode 2 and Hassle in the Castle Episode 3, or Hassle in the Castle as Episode 2 and A Clue for Scooby-Doo as Episode 3, it doesn't really matter because there's no continuity in Scooby-Doo Where Are You, so it's not necessarily a big deal, but most sources and many people like myself believe A Clue for Scooby-Doo to be Episode 2, and it doesn't really matter, like I said, but I thought I'd just throw that out there and just clear that up, just for anybody who was like, why is A Clue for Scooby-Doo a second? Because it was released second. Hassle in the Castle was just produced second. The short synopsis of the episode is, at Rocky Point Beach, the gang encounters the ghost of an old sea diver. A sailor claims that it's the ghost of Captain Cutler, who, according to legend, died at sea many years ago when his boat got wrecked, and now wants revenge. So as per usual, I'll be watching Season 1 Episode 2 Scooby-Doo Where Are You on the Scooby-Doo Where Are You, the Complete Series box set. This box set has all the good stuff. It has good special features. Every episode of Scooby-Doo Where Are You, including the fake 3rd season, which is actually the 3rd season of the Scooby-Doo show. So, yeah, it has everything you want. I've already covered the special features, so if you want to know more about my thoughts on it, you can go to my Season 2 Episode 8 review where I talk more in depth about it. Now, as far as how this episode is received, I've seen this. I believe most fans consider this episode to either be average or above average. It's usually ranked pretty well, but it's not ranked too highly. And in my original review, I actually believe I did give it 3 stars out of 5. So I agreed with a lot of the majority of fans who considered this episode to be an average episode. So this episode's got a second chance to win me over, and it could go higher or lower depending on how things go. So will my opinion go down? Will my opinion go up? Or will it stay the same? Well, let's find out, shall we, as we take a look at Season 1, Episode 2, Scooby-Doo Where Are You, and to see whether I think it is a good or bad episode of Scooby-Doo Where Are You. The episode begins with mysterious glowing footprints appearing along the shore of Rocky Point Beach. As a wave washes them out, a mysterious glowing diver slowly disappears back into the sea, and the gang arrive at Rocky Point Beach soon after and begin cooking hot dogs and dancing while Scooby goes surfing. He begins paddling along the sea when he runs into a mysterious object, Reaching into the water and pulling it up, he sees the glowing diver that we saw in the intro, and Scooby quickly dashes back to shore and tackles Shaggy, telling the gang about the ghost. They all catch sight of the diver, prompting Shaggy to run and hide behind a rock inside of a beach umbrella. The rest of the gang catch up with him, and Velma convinces Shaggy to come out of the umbrella, but Shaggy hesitates to do so after he sees the ghost, and the rest of the gang watch as the ghost again disappears back into the sea. The next night, the gang head back to their favorite place, the malt shop, and read a news article about a yacht vanishing off the coast and how the sheriff and Coast Guard are baffled by ships repeatedly disappearing. A man named Ebenezer Shark is mentioned in the article because he blames the disappearances on the ghost of Captain Cutler. Daphne wonders whether the diver they saw could have been Cutler's ghost. So the gang decide to pay a visit to Ebenezer Shark himself at his home, and Shark tells them that Captain Cutler died when his yacht sank into the graveyard of ships, and that his ghost is back for revenge to steal yachts from the marina. As he's telling the story, we see a mysterious figure's shadow outside, and I don't think we ever find out who exactly was outside. I'm led to believe that it's the actual one of the villains of the episode, I'm assuming, and not one because it wouldn't make sense for it to be anybody else. But that's what I assume, but it is still weird that we never find out who it is, but I'm guessing it's one of the villains spying on the gang and them talking to Ebenezer Shark. Scooby falls into a hole where he discovers a diving suit, which he mistakes for being the ghost. It falls on him, and he growls again and again until he gets the gang's attention. And Ebenezer Shark tells him that he found his old diving suit and suggests that the gang visit Captain Cutler's wife in her lighthouse home if they want more answers about Captain Cutler and his death and all that. The gang split up to cover more ground so they can keep an eye on their two suspects. So while Fred and Daphne keep an eye on Ebenezer Shark and see what he's up to, Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby go up to the lighthouse and visit Captain Cutler's wife, who is the other suspect of the episode. There, they find that she practices witchcraft, and they find mysterious cans, one of them containing canned hyena laughs, or an ear of a newt. While looking at a book with Velma, Shaggy is frightened by Captain Cutler's wife greeting him, in turn frightening Scooby. But for some odd reason, Velma puts on this little facade, like, beforehand, before Mrs. Cutler puts her hand on Shaggy. She's like, very interesting. Was that really necessary, Velma? Were you trying to spook out people, or were you just trying to set the mood? What was the point of that, Velma? Still, I kind of like it. I mean, it sets the mood. I mean, it was unnecessary, but it sets the mood for sure. Velma asks her about seeing Cutler, and she answers by claiming responsibility for bringing him back from the grave with her witchcraft. Mrs. Cutler also adds this.
Aye, but had I known he'd take his revenge, I'd have left him under the sea.
Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby leave the lighthouse and find a clue, which is glowing seaweed, after they, realize that they have no further use for Mrs. Cutler, and they've found everything out they need to know. And it's also a nice humorous scene of making Scooby go in for one Scooby snack, oddly enough, and Scooby plays tug of war with this mouse for this clue. And it's pretty funny, actually. I think it's pretty entertaining and funny, and it makes me laugh and chuckle a little bit. With Shaggy briefly mistaking the glowing seaweed for being the ghost due to it appearing to move by itself, but obviously we later find out that it's because of the mouse. And they follow it towards a drain pipe and tell Scooby to go in. Scooby tries passing himself off as being too fat to fit in the pipe because he doesn't want to do it, but Velma doesn't buy it and convinces him to change his mind with one Scooby snack. Not 2 or 3, like Scooby should get. Just one old plain Scooby snack. And Scooby, denies it at first. He says no. But then he just caves in and says yes. I don't know if he just wanted to get it over with, or maybe he was okay with one snack. I thought Scooby would have put up more of a fight than that. So Scooby goes into the pipe and manages to retrieve the glowing seaweed from the mouse that I mentioned earlier that was making it appear to move on its own. And the gang meet up and discuss the glowing seaweed that they found, determining that it's only found in the graveyard of ships. With all roads leading towards the graveyard of ships, and them concluding that the ghost himself could be found there, they decide to take a boat to the graveyard of ships, and Shaggy initially finds a bottle with a note in it, but it turns out to only read this.
Well, what does it say?
No deposit, no return.
Big help.
The gang see a boat moving with no one aboard and the motor not running and decide to follow it until it disappears behind a cove. Having reached a dead end and finding no trace of the ship, they decide to turn around and head back to the graveyard of ships and go down into the water and see what they can find. The 4 teens are ready to dive, but Scooby is hesitant to do so and goes high up on a wrecked ship. And I don't blame Scooby because I would not want to go underwater either, especially in this creepy ass place where there's wrecked ships everywhere, there's bodies under the water, and I don't even like being underwater at all. I'm afraid to drown, so I wouldn't do it either. So I totally get Scooby's fear. I wouldn't want to go down there. But Shaggy decides to get him down and does so successfully, but gets caught on some rope with Scooby, and they plummet down towards the ocean floor, with Scooby landing on an old barrel, but Shaggy crashes through one of the ships. I like the rope scene because, like, I totally get Scooby's fear of not wanting to go down there, but it's also kind of comedic because of what follows afterwards. It's a fun scene, for sure, but I totally get Scooby's fear of not wanting to go down there. I'm with you, Scooby. I wouldn't want to go down in underwater where there's bodies and wrecked ships, but I wouldn't want to go underwater at all, period, especially out in the middle of the ocean. But you add on the bodies and ships, and that's not something I want to deal with.
We're all set.
Except for Scooby.
Oh, come down from there.
Hey, Scooby, there's nothing to be afraid of.
I'll get him down. Howdy do yourself.
Help!
So the gang begins swimming, and they decide to split up and cover more ground. So Shaggy and Scooby cover one side of the wreck site, while Fred, Daphne, and Velma cover the other side. Fred, Daphne, and Velma, not surprisingly, discover a body, of all things, inside the cabin of a wrecked yacht, which they theorize might be Captain Cutler, until Fred reveals that the diving suit is old-fashioned and has been underwater for at least 100 years. And just looking at that, this body, whoever died like that 100 years ago, this must have been the chillest dude ever. He just accepted his death. He is sitting at a table, not in a position where you would think he'd be like frightened that he's gonna drown, and afraid that he's gonna drown and die. He's just chilling and waiting for his death and moving on to the next life. More power to this dead man, because he definitely has more bravery than I do. If I were faced with death, I would be in a much different position than he would be. I would not be chilling on that table being like, yep, I'm just gonna die like this. It's also crazy seeing a body in Scooby-Doo, which is something we don't see a lot often, so... And a real dead body. This is no fake one. This is a real-ass dead body just laying in the bottom of the ocean. And, I mean, it makes sense why it would be there, but... That takes some guts to show that. I mean, obviously they don't show the decaying stuff besides the hands. But, still, that's pretty cool. I like that they went a little more than they needed to. They didn't have to put it there. They could have, like, They could have chickened out, but... You know, the animators decided to go a little more spookier with it, and I appreciate that touch. The ghost of Captain Cutler locks the trio inside the cabin and runs off, leaving them unable to get out, and for some odd reason, Captain Cutler runs instead of swims. Like, he runs like if he was on land, which is weird because the rest of the gang, they all swim. They don't run, they swim fast because they're underwater. By the way, I like how the water looks and how it's animated. It looks real. It looks lovely. So the animators did a really good job on that. But There should be no reason. I mean, I know it's a cartoon, but even for cartoon logic, you're stretching it a little bit when you're having the guy run underwater like that. Especially when the other characters are not running like that. Like, if the gang members were running underwater too, maybe I would be okay with it, maybe I wouldn't be, but it's a little inconsistent because the villain can run underwater, but the gang swim underwater. So, like, how does this logic work? Why can he run, but the gang can't? Does he have more sophisticated equipment? Regardless, Shaggy and Scooby spot the ghost heading towards them, and Scooby inflates his diving suit, and Shaggy punctures the suit, sending Scooby hurtling towards the ghost to trip him up. After tripping the ghost, Scooby's suit catches on a ship's steering wheel and sends him in the opposite direction. He crashes through another wrecked ship and ends up in a room where several scuba tanks are being stored. Scooby quickly realizes he's found a clue and quickly slims out of the room. As Shaggy wonders where Scooby is, Scooby slams through a door, which in turn slams into Shaggy. Poor Shaggy. I can't believe he had to endure that. Scooby tells him that he's found a clue, but they are quickly chased away by the ghosts. They go onto an old wrecked ship where Shaggy tries to fire a cannon at the ghost. It's not gonna work, Shaggy. It's not gonna work. And when you know it doesn't work because he remembers matches don't work underwater and he can't light the fuse. Come on, Shaggy. This should be basic knowledge. How can you forget that? You're underwater. I know you're being chased by a ghost, but come on now. I like the underwater chase scene because I like Scooby finding the clue. I like the hijinks and shenanigans that Shaggy and Scooby deal with the Captain Cutler. And Captain Cutler's pretty creepy underwater and, you know, does, especially with his moan. And just seeing Shaggy, like, forget that fire doesn't work underwater. So, pretty fun scene, I'll say that.
The door!
We're trapped. Uh-oh. Scooby Doo! Scooby Doo! Where are you? You found the clue? Zoinks! This cannon is loaded. There's a fuse in it. Fire! Like no fire. I forgot matches don't light underwater.
The duo begin swimming away from the ghost again and hide on the fronts of two separate wrecked ships. After scaring off a fish threatening to give them away, Scooby again sees the ghost and the duo again swim away, just as the ghost tries to grab Scooby. And the duo miraculously crash through the door to the cabin where Fred, Daphne, and Velma have been trapped, freeing them. How the hell did they do that? They had some very powerful inner strength if they were able to do that. Shaggy and Scooby have some untapped potential strength that they're not using because they should have been hurt by that. I don't know how they were able to do that, but more props to them. They got some good strength. I mean, we do find out later in Foul Play in Funland that Shaggy and Scooby are stronger than we think, so maybe they kind of made a little bit of a continuity with that, at least. Scooby and Shaggy tell them about seeing the ghost, and Scooby brings up that he had the clue that he found, and so he leads the gang to the room inside the wrecked ship that contains all the scuba tanks he'd found earlier. Fred discovers glowing footprints, and the gang decide to follow them, but they find the prints at a dead end at the side of the cliff where they just were earlier, above water. So and Fred even says that if my sense of direction is right, this is the same place where we lost the ship. So Shaggy, being pooped because like he just had to run from a ghost and knock down a door, I don't blame him, sits down on a rock to rest and accidentally triggers a switch that opens a secret entrance in the side of the cliff. And the gang are all ecstatic about it, and we even get the famous animation error of Shaggy having the wrong colored hair. He has Fred's colored hair, the nice blonde hair. Gotta love that classic animation error. The gang swim through it and end up in an underground cave where they discover dozens of the missing yachts that vanished into the cove. With everything adding up and the gang seemingly having solved the mystery, they decide to make a trap for the ghost, intending to spray him with sudsy water, making him slip and land in a net. Oddly enough, despite being the first trap of the series, nobody actually acts as bait. Instead, they use noise to lure Captain Cutler to them. So they start sounding ship bells, whistles, and sirens to lure Cutler's ghost to the trap. As is tradition with Scooby-Doo, the plan obviously doesn't work correctly when Fred and Daphne can't hang on to the hose spraying the soapy water, but they still catch the ghost anyways when Scooby gets suds and lands into a boat that accidentally starts and ends up crashing into the ghost of Captain Cutler. The gang unmasks the ghost as... Who the fuck is that? Who the hell is that? I've never seen... Okay, I've never seen him before. Even the gang are puzzled. They have no idea who this man even is. Thankfully, Shaggy recognizes him and uses some seaweed to imitate a beard. And everyone instantly recognizes... Oh, that's Captain Cutler himself. I don't know how Fred and Daphne would notice because Shaggy says, you remember the picture on Widow Cutler's wall, but only Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby were in that house. So I don't know why Fred and Daphne would recognize it, unless if they went to the house too at some point. But yeah, in a rare case, the man who was the ghost, Captain Cutler himself, was playing his own ghost. That is a rarity. That never usually happens in Scooby-Doo. So the gang review the case back at their favorite place, the malt shop, I believe the next day, and read the newspaper story about their involvement in the mystery. And they determine that Cutler faked his death so that he and his wife could steal the yachts from the marina and blame it on his ghost. They would repaint the ships so they wouldn't be recognized, and then sell the stolen vessels with no one being the wiser. Cutler had been storing extra scuba tanks in the graveyard of ships when the gang saw him on the beach, and the glowing seaweed gave his suit its ghostly glow. With Fred, Daphne, Velma, and Shaggy distracted by the conversation, Scooby inexplicably drinks everybody's malts simultaneously, stunning the gang and prompting Daphne to wonder how he did it out loud, and Fred says that's another mystery. A mystery that's never been solved to this day. And so the episode ends with Scooby's only reply being a wink to the audience. I'm going to give Season 1, Episode 2 of the Scooby Doo Where Are You? 3 stars out of 5. So yeah, my opinion on the episode hasn't really changed much. It's still the same opinion I hold from the previous review. But I would say it's a high 3 out of 5. Like, I still like the episode overall. Like, it's really close to a 4, but it's just, you know, falls short with a few things. So I'll start off with the negatives of the episode and what doesn't work for me. And the first one is, I felt like that Daphne was not utilized well in this episode, and I felt that she was completely useless. I didn't see anything that was from Daphne in this episode. I didn't feel like they used her well enough in this episode, and I wish they would have done more with her. You could argue that maybe because it's implied in later series that she's rich, that maybe she was the one that brought this boat. But even then, like, I just feel like she didn't really bring anything to the episode and didn't really impact anything. And it really is a shame that Daphne was not utilized well. But yeah, she just was very weak in this episode, and I think they could have done her a lot better. The other negative of the episode for me is the mystery of the episode itself. I felt that there was really no mystery in this episode. I tried to look at, you know, what's the mystery here, and I genuinely could not figure out what it was. I couldn't see anything in this episode. Like, I felt like the gang were just fascinated with Captain Cutler's ghost when they saw it, and just wanted to learn more about him. But there was no mystique or mystery, because we learn about his story, we learn about his motives. So, and we learn where, where his operation is. We just learn everything. We get fed a lot of information that is great and adds to Cutler as a villain. But at the same time, there's no mystique or mystery that's driving the gang. There's no, like, lingering question, like, that they're trying to get the answer to or trying to figure out. So I feel for me, there was no mystery in this episode, and I felt like the gang were just kind of doing it because they sensed an adventure. They were very curious about Captain Cutler as a ghost, and they wanted to learn more about him. They just sensed that it would just be interesting to look more into him. That's all I got for negatives, though, so let's move on with the positives of the episode. And we'll start off with the gang themselves. I felt the gang overall had great chemistry in this episode, and I really enjoyed seeing the gang act like teenagers, being at the malt shop, being on Rocky Point Beach, just roasting some hot dogs, dancing, just doing what teenagers would normally do during that time period or any time period, like just having fun, like being teens. I like seeing the gang act their age and just having fun together. I like those moments. Starting with Fred, I felt like Fred was a pretty good leader in this episode, and I actually really liked that he created a trap in this time in this episode. It was the first trap he created for Scooby Doo ever, and the first trap in the Where Are You series, because he didn't create one last time. They kind of just captured the Black Knight, they just ran into him. This time, Fred did create a trap, and while it wasn't as spectacular as maybe future traps, it is a pretty cool and unique trap, and I found it pretty cool that, Fred set up a trap to catch the villain, and he was kind of leading this adventure, this mystery, if you want to call it, forward. So I felt like he fulfilled his role well and, did what he needed to. Velma was also good in this episode. She served her basic functions well, like being a good leader when they split off, and, she kind of led the charge, her and Shaggy as, like, leaders together when they went to go talk to Mrs. Cutler. And she also helped piece together the clues of the mystery. And I also felt that she had great chemistry with Shaggy in this episode. I liked their banter back and forth. Like, I just liked their dynamic. It was really fun and playful, and I really enjoyed it. I always love seeing that dynamic. I love when Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby, are split off as a collective group. I think it works well. Like, I feel like Velma has great chemistry with Shaggy and Scooby and really bounces off of them well, especially Shaggy. Like, I felt like her and Shaggy's banter were great. And then you have Shaggy and Scooby. Shaggy and Scooby were, of course, their great selves as always. They were their usual funny selves. They didn't really do... They did eating at the malt shop, and they weren't too cowardly in this episode, so they were pretty funny. They got to a lot of shenanigans. But the one thing I really liked about Shaggy and Scooby in this episode is that they got more to do in this episode. Shaggy found the location of the villain's hideout when he sat on that rock, and Scooby found both clues in the episode, which in turn helped prove that Captain Cutler wasn't a real ghost and what his motive was. So I felt like Shaggy and Scooby provided more for the episode, and they really helped with this mystery, with this adventure. So I really liked how they utilized Shaggy and Scooby in this episode. We got to see them be funny and go on and have some fun shenanigans, but they also got to help find some clues and find the villain's hideout. Then we have the villain of the episode, the ghost of Captain Cutler. I really like the ghost of Captain Cutler. I actually think he's really cool. I think he's pretty creepy and eerie. I feel like he fits the setting well. And I really like his backstory where he was like this, he was just going on his yacht and then crashed with another yacht or a ship or something like that. And that's why he's been stealing yachts as sort of revenge against, how he died, basically. I thought that was really cool, and I felt like Captain Cutler was definitely more creepy than the Black Knight, because not only did he fit the creepy setting well of the episode, but I really liked his moan. The glowing diving suit was really cool, and the diving helmet was pretty creepy as well. Like, I just felt like he was pretty creepy. He wasn't threatening or scary, but he was creepy and eerie, so I'll give him that. Outside of costume, we actually have an interesting thing with this episode, because Captain Cutler is playing his own ghost. So obviously we never see him out of costume, because that would have ruined the whole charade. I mean, maybe he could have, like, come up with a fake identity, and maybe been, like, a third suspect in the episode, and it would have made sense. But Mrs. Cutler is his accomplice, as we find out at the end of the episode, so she kind of fulfills the outside of costume role. And normally I like a straightforward, like, you know, whoever's in the costume, I like, you know, seeing them outside of costume and what they're like. You know, are they a good suspect? Do they provide good lore for the episode? You know, what do they do? And and normally I wouldn't give a pass on this, but because Mrs. Cutler fills the role well, and because she technically is a villain as well, and she's the villain outside of costume while Cutler's the one in costume, it kind of works. Like, no, it's a rare occasion where I think, like, I'm willing to let it slide, that even though we never got to see Captain Cutler outside of costume himself, obviously because he was playing his own ghost, Mrs. Cutler, his wife, fulfilled that role well, and I felt like she was good at fulfilling that role because she helped provide more information about his backstory, about Cutler himself, and how she used witchcraft to bring him back to life. I also really like the motive of the villain of the two villains of the episode. I think the motive was pretty unique and interesting. I like the idea of them stealing yachts, repainting them so no owners or anybody can recognize them, and selling them. Like, yachts are pretty pricey. Like, they're very good looking. You could get a lot of money off of that, and while, like I said, like, even though it's technically a money motive, kind of like the Black Knight in the last episode, it's not something we see often of villains, you know, stealing a vehicle, in this case, like a yacht, underwater water vehicle, repainting it so nobody can recognize it, and then selling it to people to make profit. I felt like that was really cool and unique, and kind of puts a nice spin on the money motive, where there's just more than they're just trying to make money. They're doing a whole awesome scheme with it, and that's what makes a money motive good. So I felt like their motive was unique and interesting, and I really liked the motive of the villains. Scooby-Doo really started off well with the motives of villains. Like, I felt like they really tried to think outside the box out of the gate and make it more than a straight money or land motive. The clues of the episode were also great. They helped provide, help point more information, like, to where the gang need to go next. And they kind of, like, tell the gang, like, that there's more going on. Obviously you got the glowing seaweed, which is explain how Cutler gets the glow. And you also have the scuba tanks, and that gets explained as well, where Cutler had extra scuba tanks down there. And why would a ghost need that? A ghost wouldn't need extra, scuba tanks at all, because it's dead. Like, they don't have lungs, they don't breathe, like, they're dead. It's a ghost. So, like, I really think the clues were good because they helped prove that there was more going on and helped point the gang to where they needed to go. And there was a good amount of them. It wasn't overkill, but it wasn't too little. It was a good, right amount of clues for this episode. Finally, I found the atmosphere and setting of the episode to be really good, actually. I think the atmosphere of the episode was creepy and eerie because of the dark, foggy night, along with the shipwrecks and the bodies on the water. And it really was done well. Like, you had the dark, foggy night when they were on the beach, or, at Ebenezer Shark's home, and, Mrs. Cutler's house as well. And then, obviously, the graveyard of ships, like, there was a lot of, fog and darkness. But also, like, the graveyard of ships was probably the most creepy out of locations, and was obviously the main one. And it was enhanced, really, the setting of the episode was enhanced by this stuff. Like, the setting really enhanced the atmosphere of the episode, which was good. And Captain Cutler enhanced it well, because he fit the setting as well, with his, with his ghostly glow and, everything he was doing. And his moaning and all that. And like I said, the setting was also good too. It helped complement the villain of the episode because it fit his aesthetic, his theme, what he was going for, and it fit with the like I said, the two houses, the beaches, and obviously the graveyard of ships, which is the main location. Because like they were unique and helped enhance the atmosphere of the episode. Like, you had all these shipwrecks, which imply that there was a lot of dead bodies in the water, and then you also have the water. And the water is a very dangerous place. Like, you're out in the middle of the ocean, there's these shipwrecks all around, there's bodies all down there, and even though they only show one, there's bound to be a lot of them down there. And so, like, there's a lot of tension and suspense, because, like, the gang are going into an element to where there are many ways they could easily screw up and die down there, and that really adds a lot of tension and suspense and creepiness and eeriness in the atmosphere because of the setting, because there's like the settings in the water, and there's bodies down there that showcase why it's a dangerous place, and shipwrecks showcasing it as well. You also have a villain that's like an example of that, and is creepy and could potentially be a threat, obviously, in this water. This is his element. Like, he's a sea diver. Like, he's a ghostly sea diver. So, really good on the atmosphere and setting front. I really enjoyed both of them. Overall, guys, I would recommend this episode to fans and newcomers of the show. Despite it being a 3 out of 5, it's a high 3 out of 5, and it's a really good, solid episode. It's obviously held back by those two major negatives, with Daphne not being her strongest, and there not being really a clear mystery, at least in my eyes. I didn't see really a mystery here. I just felt like the gang were just kind of doing it because they were fascinated by the ghost Captain Cutler and want to learn more about him, and not necessarily try to solve any sort of lingering question or potential mystery of where this person is at. Why is this monster after this person? Why is this monster haunting this place? Like, those kind of questions. But otherwise, it's a fun and enjoyable episode, and I feel like you can have a great time with it. And it's nice and very creepy and eerie, and Captain Cutler is a classic villain, obviously. He's really good and is a good second villain to follow after the Black Knight. And I think he's better than the Black Knight. He's much more creepier, he's much more eerie. He fits the setting well, and I find his vibe to be really good. There's a reason why he's one of Scooby's most iconic foes. Not just because he's the second villain ever of Scooby-Doo, but he's just very creative. Like, he's just like got a good costume, a good glow, like, and all that, and a good moan too. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the review. Please give it a like if you did. Comment down below your thoughts on the episode. You like this episode? You kind of like me, where you're pretty high on it? You think it's a really good episode? Do you hate this episode? I'd be interested in that as well. Like, are you not big on this episode? Like, is this one of your least favorites of Scooby Doo Where Are You? Or are you somewhere in the middle as well, like me, where, you think it's okay, it's not good or bad? Maybe you're teetering towards me, like, where you think it's like a high average episode, but not, not amazing, but not bad either. I'm curious for your thoughts, so let me know. And subscribe for more Scooby-Doo content like this, or if you're just interested in any of my other content. I'll have plenty more Scooby-Doo content for the rest of the summer special, so you don't gotta worry about that. I'm gonna have plenty more Scooby content on the way, not just for the summer special, but obviously Scooby Month, which will be in September, so buckle up, because we'll have a lot of Scooby content going forward, and I'm very excited to tackle more Scooby-Doo. Love the franchise, love this gang, love talking about them. Always a treat to talk about them. You can also follow me on Facebook, where I have discussions about things we talked about on both my channels, and Twitch, where I hope to live stream in the future. So in my next video, I will continue reviewing the new Scooby-Doo movies with Season 1, Episode 7 of the new Scooby-Doo movies, the Sandy Duncan episode, obviously, that I mentioned in the last review. So if you're interested in my thoughts on the Sandy Duncan episode, then tune in for my next video. But obviously the next re-review up on the list for Scooby Doo Where Are You, which will be after the next video, will be Season 1, Episode 3 of Scooby Doo Where Are You? Hassle in the Castle. I'm going to re-review that, and obviously that was an episode that not many people view highly, except for a very small minority, and I didn't view it highly either, but it's got a second chance. Maybe it'll win me over. We'll see. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and as always, peace out.
Where are you? We got some work to do now. Scooby Doo, where are you? We need some help from you now. Come on, Scooby Doo, I see you. Pretending you got a silver. You're not human being, 'cause I can see the way you shake and shiver. You know we got a mystery to